Hi, I'm Pertigo. This is Mission 7 of Antioch, Episode 2. Mirror, Mirror. The Executor's Citadel at New Antioch may still stand, but little else is certain. Yeah, who are they going to kill off next? I hope it's me, the player character. Why? Okay, I'm still Terran, by the way.
Judicator, I share your grief for the loss of Korun and New Rock. I did not know them long, but their fire burned bright enough to illuminate even a shadow warrior such as I.
They were prepared to fight. Unfortunately, preparing for loss does not always come so easily.
How many more must die? How many have already been sacrificed? Kas, Adun, Jabok, Argus, Tassadar?
And Goldaris.
Goldaris?
Long ago, Judicator, I was once a zealot of your people. It was in that glorious time of peace and tranquility that I knew Goldaris and studied with him the ancient teachings. It is to him that I owe my enlightenment, my departure from tradition. Like those he followed and those who followed him, he sought freedom of mind and spirit, and was murdered for it by his own mentor, Tyradun.
Tyradun?
One and the same.
I can scarcely believe it.
Believe it, Judicator. My predecessor, Loriok, witnessed the event with his own eyes.
Nanoth, Tyradun, and Loriok were Templar under the leadership of Jabok. As pupils of the Templar, Goldaris, myself, and the brave Sinar waged war against the mad armies of a rogue Judicator, obsessed with the forbidden secrets of Zalnagan technologies.
And who was this Judicator?
Severak. His name is seldom spoken. It was forbidden to record it in the archives. Such was his evil. Only Loriok kept a personal account of his doings. The tome rests in my custody now. Even I do not dare open it.
The thirst for knowledge does not denote evil intent.
Judicator, you hardly knew my contemporaries.
Ah, where have I heard that before?
Imagine the fields of ire, soaked in the blood and dismembered limbs of your own people. A glimpse into the foul blasphemy of his evil.
No, Moloch. Even that would not be a glimpse.
I believe I understand, but what became of this Severak? And what relation does it bear to Tyradun and the death of your friend Goldaris?
And the rest of the campaign!
Our Templar masters, Goldaris, Sinar, and I fought against Severak and his twisted minions. Their forces were legion, but we stood firm. It was in the darkest hour of our struggle that Tyradun betrayed us to Severak. Our losses were great, and Goldaris fell by Tyradun's own hand. Only Nanoth's interference saved Tyradun from Jabok's fury and my own blades. He sacrificed himself by forcing the merging. He and Tyradun became one. Nanoth's will was strong enough to carry out the assassination of Severak, for which we all owe him a great debt. But, in time, Tyradun's will once again grew dominant. Jabok could not bring himself to destroy his old friend Nanoth, and so sealed the Archon alive in a nondescript temple far from the comings and goings of others. After that day, I and Loriok spoke truthfully of the incident to our people. The Assembly branded us as heretics for blaspheming against the Archon's memory and calling Jabok a liar. We were exiled.
According to Loriok's journal, Nanoth Tyradun had never been seen or heard from again. That is, until you encountered him at the Temple of Jabok. May its ruins rest in peace.
I understand your doubts, Moloch, but for once, I have little to say. I must think on this. I must think on this at great length. Entaro Adun.
Antaro Adun.
Was it proper to burden him with this?
No, he just lost his friend!
But it was necessary. Drumalis is wise, but his is not a questioning soul. Perhaps this may open his eyes.
Or perhaps it may close them. Forever.
See, I feel like this briefing would be suitable if we knew any of some of this information, any of the information that's like related to it, and if it was like actually important to the narrative. But up until now, it hasn't been. Also, their characterization of nanothyroid as an Archon that's been sealed away for centuries or whatever does not fit with like the reaction that Korun and Nurok, as well as Termalis, have when they first meet nanothyroid in the third mission of the original, like the first episode. They're like, it's taken aback, and it seems like the Zerg's invasion forced the hand. Like, that's sort of the subtext that I got. I guess it's probably not explicitly said as to why nanothyroid merged, or when he merged, but it always felt like to me like they were making, like they were surprised to return and find them as one entity instead of two separate Templar. I guess they could be surprised that he was the single entity, the Archon, was freed from the temple, but I don't know. I mean, again, fair play if this was actually set up in some way, and then he's like, oh yeah, even we have been awakened as a result of the Zerg here, and then like I sort of, you know, conflated that in my head with them merging because of the Zerg. I may be misremembering. I just feel like it could be set up better, and it bears no relation at all to what we are experiencing, what we just experienced. So maybe they'll tie it all together in the mission that we're about to play.
I must regretfully inform you that the Judicator does not wish to be disturbed.
What is it, Grillion?
I am receiving a transmission from a ship in orbit. A Terran ship.
Terran?
Yes. Wait, there is more. No, he has retired to the Executor's Citadel and does not wish to be disturbed.
Tell him it's about Mox.
A transmission regarding Commander Mox?
It is merely a single Terran in orbit, Judicator. I was about to dismiss him.
No, thank you. Pass the signal through to me here.
As you wish.
Speak, Terran.
You don't know me. The name's Aster. Trent Aster. Or you can call me Trench if you like.
I have no time for idle chat nor long introductions. You mentioned Commander Mox. Do you bring news of his current status?
You could say that. I'm an information broker, and I was recently hired by the commander. And I've recently discovered something interesting. Normally I just finish the job, collect my dues, and move on to the next thing, but in the light of this information, I can't exactly return to my employer.
Oh? Explain.
I take it you know about Mox's exile?
I was present, yes.
I know who planted the homing beacon in Mox's quarters.
Indeed. Do tell.
50,000 credits first.
Terran, if your information is of any use to me, you may be paid. If not, I may very well blow you out of the sky for wasting my time.
Fair enough. The person who planted that homing beacon wasn't Mox. It was Dale Gurney. And that's not even the interesting part. Those weren't Kelmorian wraiths attacking the station.
Elaborate.
Those wraiths were using fake serial numbers and transponder codes, flying around all painted up to look like Combine ships. Check your old data and you'll see that the masked signatures are specific to the troops on Mount Midnight, the old Char Psi Reserve under jurisdiction of the Combine.
I do not recall seeing a substantial air force of any kind at the commander's former base. You are saying the wraiths that attacked him belonged to the Brisbane contingent. For what purpose would they attack themselves?
Well, I managed to get my hands on a transmission between Gurney and a Kelmorian officer. But from the conversation, it turns out that the officer was just someone under Gurney's command. That Wraith Squadron's instructions were to pose as Kelmorian pilots, attack the station, set the ships on autopilot, and eject for pickup by the other officers conveniently on leave. That set the stage for the bug to be found, and Mox to get kicked off.
Does this not sound a bit contrived to you, Terran? What is the point of staging this elaborate charade just to exile Commander Mox?
Ah, but that's where this little conspiracy gets good. There are a few inconsistencies here that you just can't ignore. Now, didn't Mox tell you that the Combine was planning to use an army of psionically controlled Zerg against the Dominion?
Yes.
Yeah, well, what he failed to mention was that the Combine is actually a part of the Dominion itself now. It'd be pretty stupid for the Kelmorians to want revenge over monetary losses, when the Dominion Engineering Corps is actually a subsidiary of the Combine itself. And that's just one example off the top of my head. The Combine hasn't suffered on account of Mengsk rising to power. It's gotten richer.
So the commander's information was mistaken?
Not quite. Isn't it also a coincidence that the two of them happen to be training ghosts only a stone's throw away from an old, supposedly abandoned Morian mining base? That coincidentally happened to house a platoon of telepaths in cold storage, and a psi emitter capable of luring all the Zerg on Char to any planet like flies to flypaper?
You are saying Commander Mox and his forces wanted to use the psionic technology themselves, and that he purposely lied to us in order to obtain it?
Now you're starting to get the picture.
And what of the Kelmorian troops who assaulted us shortly before the Psi Cocoon was destroyed? Commander Mox himself assisted my forces in dispatching them. I suppose those were imposters too.
No, those were the real deal. Obviously, from all the gear at Mount Midnight, the real Combine was into psionic experimentation. The Dominion Engineering Corps ain't just a bunch of bridge builders and civil engineers. Somehow, Gurney and Mox got wind that the Combine was experimenting with the Zergon Ire. All that bull about a plot to overthrow Mengsk and keep the Protoss occupied? That was pure fabrication. The Psi Cocoon on Ire was another of the Combine's experiments, and the Kelmorian forces that arrived to harass you were just there to try to preserve their investment. Mox and Gurney planned to take out the Combine, grab whatever technology that was used to create the cocoon, and return safely to a shiny new space station waiting in orbit over Ire, the most heavily infested world in the Koprolu sector. You don't actually think the two of them and their ragtag group of yokels could actually help defend your province from the rest of the Zerg rampaging over the rest of the planet, do you?
Continue.
Well, the short and the long of it is that your Terran buddies wanted to use the Zerg much in the same way that the fictional Combine wanted to. Except they had no intention of striking at Core Hollow. Oh no. From what I read in their classified files, they wanted to pose as Combine agents, hold small Dominion border worlds for ransom, and make away like billionaires. The real Combine would take the blame and get wiped out by Dominion forces, allowing Mox and Gurney to get a foothold in the mining industry, to boot.
And what of Mox's banishment?
Gurney simply got too greedy. Mox was never told the full extent of Gurney's plans, especially the part about disguising themselves as the Combine. He was just a loose end to get rid of, and they couldn't just whack him and his loyal followers without arousing too much suspicion from his new Protoss buddies.
Us.
You got it, Chief.
You.
Gurney did not strike me as being the insidious and calculating leader you make him out to be. He seemed far too quiet and reserved to be the mastermind of such a grandiose scheme.
I hate to be trite, but it's always the quiet ones you have to watch out for. You'd be surprised at how many idiots there are in this galaxy that attempt crazy things like this on a daily basis. And more surprised as to how many actually get away with it.
Surprise? Nothing has surprised me in a long, long time. But I am now at a point in my life where I would actually have to agree.
So, what do you plan to do?
What can I do? My own people are mired in deceit and treachery.
Look, if you were bent on stopping a whole division of the Terran bureaucracy from annihilating the Terran throne world before, I don't see any reason why you can't stop a couple of charlatans from ruining the lives of 500 million people on 6 defenseless worlds now. It's all in a day's work. Right?
I am not so certain anymore, Terran. My homeworld is in ashes, infested by Zerg. 2 of my closest companions are dead, and others that I have respected and believed in with every ounce of my being, may be frauds and traitors.
Not to be Mr. Insensitive or anything, but I'm picking up a lot of Protoss movement all of a sudden, heading for your position.
And what of it? There is much to be done here. It is not unusual that there would be heightened activity among my people.
Yeah, well, these Protoss are coming from the underground tunnels surrounding your city. I kinda thought you guys were surface dwellers.
Forgive me for interrupting, Judicator, but did I hear that correctly?
Moloch, I have just received word. Several Corsairs in your personal squadron have been shot down by Dragoons and Templar emerging from the caverns.
They are coming.
Forgive me, Terran, if I do not jump at the chance to right every wrong your cohorts have perpetrated. I simply do not have the energy. Leave, or you may inadvertently stumble into the thick of a war you are unprepared to face.
Alright, fine. I can see that nothing I've said has meant anything to you. But I still expect those credits to be delivered.
Go. Now!
Have fun.
Judicator, our attackers are nearly upon us.
Let them come. I am tired of fleeing. We will defend this city to the death. Be it Protoss, Zerg, Terran, or any other. We will not retreat. And we will not surrender.
Oh, holy shit, I get to play? Wowee, I thought it was a cutscene.
Awaiting your thoughts.
How come they don't even have, like, different stats or anything? Seems an awful... Oh, okay. Well. Just another...
It appears that we have no Templar or Arbiters with which to combat the enemy. According to the local reports, Alderus has called a legion away from here for some sort of meeting.
Leaving us, as usual, to fend for ourselves. Never mind that now. Are your Dark Templar forces ready to stand with us?
We are at your disposal.
Then they will do just as well.
Do not underestimate us, Judicator. We harbor powers even you do not suspect.
They may prove useful, Judicator, for it appears we also have Zerg company.
Your forces are under attack.
If I must.
Well, I don't know what the mission strategy is going to be here. What's the... Destroy all opposition. Maybe we're actually fighting an AI this time? I mean, I can only imagine. Okay, let's start getting shields, all these upgrades that we have to get. Oh, forgot to send those guys to get gas. You don't really have a whole lot of acclimatization. Not a whole lot of time to get acclimatized to what's going on here, which is fine. You know? I say we mount an offensive against the Protoss first. Get rid of them. I guess we'll get a fleet beacon since we don't have one. We can get carriers, which is nice. And this ties into the that Protoss versus Protoss mission. What the fuck am I looking at? I was hoping we would be fighting an AI. I don't know if that's for sure or not, but I sure hope it is. Where are we at with the fleet beacon? Is that done yet? No. Alright, who needs to control their armies? They appear to be spawning, though. I'm hoping we're not. I mean, they are building stuff, so they have an AI. Maybe this is a defense force. Let's grab Disruption Web. Need that. Oh, we're out of units. Wow, they really have a lot of shit. I wonder if this is Protoss campaign insane. We were utterly destroyed. Hopefully we all intercepted a group of enemies along the way. Spawned or otherwise.
What is it now?
I guess Maelstrom would be nice. Bring a couple of these guys down there. And do we have any other gateways? We have one here. Looks like that's it. So we'll just remake all of our stuff. What research was that anyways? Who knows? We already have Dragoon range and Zealot legs. Oh, it was Disruption Web, right. Okay. Well, now the question is, what do I do about resources? Because it doesn't seem like we have a whole lot of anything. I guess I'll go ahead and order up Gravitic thrusters.
Upgrade complete.
Air armor might be more important, though. Yeah, I think I would rather have tankier units. What am I looking at over here? Wowee. What am I looking at? Alright, I'm gonna send a probe down here. We can tighten up these defenses. I was not expecting gameplay for this mission. So, the fact that it has gameplay is nice, I guess. That's all I can really say about that, though. It's kind of dumb to even have to say in the first place, but... Do we really even need scouts? I don't feel like they really bothered with them. Ah, there's more than one Zerg player. We don't have a robotics support bay. It's going to be 100 gas, right? We do have Disruption Web now, which will be useful. I'm going to grab these units and hope that I don't need them. I know we have other Corsairs scattered around, if I'm not mistaken. Wow, Dark Swarm, nice. Where's that probe that I sent for? I sent for a probe! Where is it? Grab a couple of photon cannons over here just to keep this area safe. I feel like that's a pretty decently sized force. And I'm gonna add some pylons, cap ourselves out, and get another gateway, then a cannon, and a shield battery, and everything else under the sun. Do we save up for shields? Probably not. I don't think we need them. Would be nice. It's like a luxury. It's not really super important, in my opinion.
Your opinion, huh?
Hey, wait, why the fuck is Discord...
Hey,
well,
hey.
I'm in the middle of playing Antioch.
Are you winning?
Well, nobody wins when they play Antioch.
Antioch? You don't feel like more of a man playing Antioch?
Antioch.
Why don't you feel like a man playing Antioch?
I had to watch a 10-minute cutscene, and then now I'm playing the game, I guess.
Was the cutscene engaging?
It's pretty interactive.
Do you feel like you're engaged in an epic story?
They're really trying to do something really weird with the story at this point. Like, it was pretty straightforward up until this point, and then all of a sudden, out of left field, they just decided, hey, we need an epic plot twist that's really going to change how people perceive this story. And it changed how I perceive it, alright.
Did they like reach in your pants and twist your boxers?
What is going... Okay, this AI is out of the fucking... out of control. Pretty sure they're just running Protoss campaign insane, so...
Campaign insane.
It's insane.
Aren't you playing StarCraft 2?
No, this is Brood War version.
Oh, how do you have a cinematic in Brood War?
Some units do stuff, transmissions happen. It's pretty
But
exciting.
you can't have like epic cameras and lens flares and male birthing.
No, no male birthing. Pretty close. Watching Dragoons bounce it back and forth while they attempt to attack photon cannons is essentially the same thing.
I see. Well, photon cannons become erect when they shoot at you, and that's kind of sexist, I think. I think that Blizzard needs to go back and redesign photon cannons so they don't oppress me.
That would be ideal, I think. Gotta have an inclusive remaster next
I
time.
thought you were playing the StarCraft 2 version of those.
I'm double teaming.
Let us attack.
Double
That
dipping.
sounds really lewd.
So the reason why I'm even in this is apparently every time I open up my OBS, it makes me auto-join this voice channel. Because
I've seen you in here for a while, but I was playing D&D, so
role-playing with other men.
hopped in here and told you the Leather Club was 2 blocks down.
Well, here's round 3 where I attempt to breach the Protoss base. See how
That
far I
sounds
get.
dirty.
I think maybe I've cracked the shell.
Are you now making your Tumblr account? You're breaking the conditioning.
Something like that.
Those dirty alt-right heathen Alex Jones watching KKK scum
Trump voting.
that post on Trump voting.
Doesn't Trump have his own subreddit? I was hearing about that.
I don't know. I don't go to fucking Reddit. I have standards.
Your forces
Well.
are under attack.
Those are hard to find these days.
See, if I'm going to go to a shock website, I'm old school. I prefer like Team 4 or Goatsy. Reddit is just like, you go on there if you want your ethics challenged by a 16-year-old sack full of encyclopedias from France.
I don't understand Reddit in particular because it's like everybody knows it's bad. Like everybody thinks that everybody from the site is awful and should be all of their opinions should be immediately discounted. And yet people still
The only real alternative for hipsters and liberals is Facebook. And Facebook is only known for religious debates. And I use that word very sparingly, debates. You know who PCM is, right?
who?
PCM.
No, sounds like a
He was an interesting fellow from back in Star Alliance days.
oh that PCM.
He's,
okay.
Yeah, PCM.
I'm vaguely familiar with the name, but not with the individual
Apparently he
behind
still
it.
crusades on Facebook in religious debates and gets regularly destroyed. So that's what Facebook is. I mean, other than the fact it's like a data mining service.
Yeah, I mean, it's
for,
like if you're
advertisers.
too lazy to install a Bitcoin miner onto your PC, Facebook will do it from your browser.
Yeah. Zuckerberg is a very helpful young man. Helps you get rid of those CPU cycles you're not using.
Oh shit. I'm stuck.
Oh man, you gotta pull out.
I don't think I can. I think I'm trapped inside. They're biting.
It's time to get out the jaws of life.
I'm pretty sure the AI is busted for the Zerg, so I'm glad I picked the Protoss to fight first, since they were the only ones actually throwing stuff at me. I was attacked by 3 Zerglings, and nothing else so far.
Were the Zerglings neutral?
No. That's a good question, though. You have to ask yourself that amidst this.
Gotta ask that.
Isn't that just a real... Where the
I find
Zerglings...
campaigns so funny because, like, you look past like the qualitative aspect and stuff like that.
Well, you just
just
try
look
to...
at
You're
them as,
looking
like-
for something that's functional, right? Like, that's all.
Well, like I look at sometimes I like looking at them as just like you just like get into the designers' heads and you're just trying to see what they're thinking while they're making it.
Right.
And So you got a Zerg, and he just sends 3 Zerglings after you. So obviously, the guy who made this campaign made this mission and played it and was like, oh yeah, the Zerg sent 3 Zerglings after me. This is an epic and engaging map. And you can get deeper than that. You can be like looking into how much weed he was smoking, how many choir boys he was plundering.
Well, you can try and figure out based on, if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, you can like look at map comments, trigger comments, any posts that they've made.
I hope one day people look at my comments if I ever publish something with actual comments in there, because I think they're just full of racial slurs and I think it's remotely useful.
Right. That's how to, that's the way to do it.
Because then people will see just how bad my organization structure really is.
For me, it's like you'll very occasionally. For the most part, it's just like, you know, a description of events. It's very straight, playing it straight with those things. But occasionally, you'll see like a comment that's right out of left field that you were not expecting. It'd be like Necron's birthday present over an infested command center or something.
You mean like in StarCraft 2, where there's a comment that says we just copy-pasted hard for insane? Because that was such a comment that was in there. It's funny because there was that, I don't know where it came from. It was like in beta or something else that people ripped. There was actually a version of the Galaxy files for StarCraft 2. There's a bunch of flags you can turn off in the Galaxy, and there was actually a commented version of that. But the actual version doesn't have the comments in it. So I managed to find the commented version on Pastebin, just this random Pastebin by searching for command names. I managed to find a commented version.
Oh, okay.
That version doesn't actually exist in the real game. So there was, at one point, comments that someone had made for it, and I'm sure it was Blizzard employee. I'm sure that employees just paste their stuff on public Pastebin. I mean, why wouldn't they? That's where they get half their shit from. And there's like useful information in there that, of course, is not actually part of the game. So yeah, you can learn a lot just by looking at the way things behave, and then looking in the code and stuff. Although good in code is usually self-documenting. All the names of the functions, variables, and stuff like that is usually a really self-explanatory and well-written code. But of course, when you're talking about the games industry, I've never heard a single person say that good practice is ever adhered to anywhere.
Yeah.
I've never looked in map comments for custom stuff, though.
Well, a lot of projects don't even have comments, which is the real scary thing. So you'll just be sifting through the sea of uncommented junk.
It's really self-explanatory. You don't necessarily need comments, but usually if I was like testing stuff and I had like a whole whack of triggers that were disabled, like when I was doing my AI stuff, then I start throwing in comments about anything that it pulls from externally.
Well, you know, you can't even comment on stuff in an AI script, or it just gets commented out by the program, so... As much as I would love to comment stuff, like, especially regions, like, with the new technology, you can determine where the AI attacks to and from. And,
Really now? How do you do that?
You just figure out a map, like a region on the map, and it's, like, obviously only useful in campaign contexts, or if you're running an AI script for a specific map in Melee, I guess. But other than that, it's just like, oh, you can... do this.
That'd be pretty useful. That's basically what StarCraft 2 does for you. If you're using triggered waves, you can determine waypointing for them to go to.
Right, like their source point, their origin, and their destination. Basically, it's like you can't really control too much else. Like it would be nice to control like what base prepares them, but they just prepare from all available factories. But ultimately, it's like looking at that, it would be really nice for me to comment. This region, which is just denoted in coordinates, there's nothing other than that. You'd have to like cross-reference the coordinates from the map itself.
Oh, you mean not an actual region, like an object in the editor?
Oh, yeah. It's not like... Well, you can use locations as well, but they're still ID-based. They're not like... You're working with an AI script that's not actually connected to the map, besides the fact that it's run through a trigger in the map. Holy shit, this AI has so much defense. What is going on here? Arbitrarily, I can't build Archons either, so...
I mean, judging by StarCraft's lore, Isn't the entire concept of just making armies of Archons kind of ridiculous?
Well, they had an Archon hero in this campaign, and they're supposed to burn out after like a couple days or something, so... He was sealed... I just found out he was sealed away in a temple for centuries.
Ned/Todd.
Yeah, that's him.
Ned/Todd.
Well, I guess I'm using these Reavers this time.
You know, temples are places of like religious
significance, worship,
stuff. There's another word I was looking for. Worship is one of it, but even like just religious practice in general. So
why the Protoss have them
they're
at
just
all?
used for stuff like prisons. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I think it was like the justification in this context is like, oh, he's dangerous because the evil side of the evil Templar that was combined with a good Templar was taking over. So he would be...
Were the Protoss even really religious?
They have some references to like worshipping the Xel'Naga because they gave them life and stuff, but mostly they revered like members of their society that had long passed. Like Kaz was like their Jesus, basically. Started a lot of things for them. Did a lot of cool stuff or something. I don't know. He like invented the Kala, basically, and that was like how they got out of their version of the Dark Age, where they were just killing each other all the time. So
I think they just worship Greys. It's like the goddamn pharaohs. We was kings and shit, blessed by the ancient aliens.
yeah, basically.
But then Zeratul drank too deep of the Kool-Aid, and now he's woke.
Oh no, there's about 30 lurkers. I don't have any observers.
It's okay, half the time lurkers don't even grow.
Yeah, well, most of them died already, so it's pretty cool. I'm also ensnared and fighting in a choke point, so pretty good design by me. Picking my fights wisely here. Reavers are spinning.
Meat is spinning.
Oh no! They're all trying to get out of their base and defend themselves, but they can't because their base is laid out in such a dumb fashion. It's okay, I can't get to them either, so it's fine. Here, I'll mind control an Overlord and detect it that way. Perfect. Genius plays by me, honestly.
Man, that's next level. Holy shit.
What is even happening? I might accidentally... I hope I don't accidentally suicide a hero or something. Lose after all this. I still have another base I have to get rid of after this too. This is misery. This like I was talking about. I was playing a Warcraft 3 campaign, and I was talking about how there's really not a whole lot of like this. Basically, there's not a whole lot of character building and character development. And like when I look at the purpose of a map, I'm thinking like, oh, how is it used to advance the plot? And you know, if it's at least fun to play, I can ignore a lot of anything that's like not effectively used plot-wise or whatever. But if it's neither, it really needs
hard
to
do character building in a campaign because you're basically stuck doing it through cinematics. Brood War doesn't have cinematics. You can't do fuck all if you're just standing there. You need to have at least some kind of animations associated with it, which is possible, but no one will ever do it because they're lazy. StarCraft 2 is a little more flexible. You can't do the facial animations nearly as easily.
Yeah, you have to use like a trigger library that somebody invented.
Well, the face animations are a third-party program. You need to have a license for.
Yeah, well, if you decide if you decide to take like the Brood War approach, where they're just bobbing their heads generically.
Yeah, so the simplicity of Brood War, you still need custom graphics to do it, or custom iScript animations to some extent. Like for example, you have submarines holding guys up. You can use a custom iScript to make them hold out their weapons but not actually shoot.
Right.
And then somehow call that. I mean, I don't know how you do it for triggers because you can't call specific animations through triggers. But hypothetically, you can just have a billion different instances of the Marine, and then have the one where his idol is always holding the rifle out. You could probably do some smoking.
Right. Yeah. And you would just use like a plugin thing to change the unit ID to the one where he's always idle or something.
The thing about character design and progression is they need to have character interaction. So I just played a D&D session. It's 5.5 hours long, and the vast majority of it was dialogue and talking and stuff. And then like there's people who play D&D that look at sessions like that and are like, oh my god, we never have this kind of conversations. We usually just go from fight to fight to fight. Like, it's very objective oriented. It's not really a lot of discussion, but there's a lot of these sessions where it's literally just dialogue. But that's like 5 hours. Now, let's say it's a transmission, you can cut down, because 5 hours is like people thinking what to say and reading up stuff in the process. But
right,
you can have still like an hour of dialogue, and that's actually not really that much has happened in the game at that stage, because they're inside a cave inside a mountain, and they go up, and then they were reading some murals and stuff, and then they were talking to some NPCs, and ultimately not really a lot actually happened, especially compared to, say, a Brood War mission where you have like 3 missions dedicated to the assault for the defense of Ire. Well, a whole shit ton happens while you're attacking a planet, and you don't really have an hour between missions for people to argue about stuff either, because people are just going to fall asleep.
Right.
So if you're going to try to do character development in a campaign, I think that you have to kind of can't really like find a middle ground for it. You're either gonna have to go in balls deep, and then like testicle deep, and then like stuff your legs in there too, and like crawl inside of it like a stand, and just hope for the best, or not really have that much at all. Because if you only go halfway, you're not gonna have enough really to convey your characters, much less for the audience to care about them. You need to have a reason to care about the characters, and most of these campaigns that start off with like a 10 or 15 minute cinematic, you don't have any investment in the characters, so the cinematics ultimately don't really mean that much. Yeah. Most of the characters are Mary Sue's too, so.
Well, I think that there's like an understanding that a lot of people don't. I don't know what it is. It's like, it feels like to me a lot of people don't pay attention to dialogue. Not just in the design phase of a campaign or whatever, but like in the context of somebody who's like, I put a lot of effort into making my dialogue believable and sensible, and besides that,
well, it's like all your objectives and skill tips and help and stuff, just throw all that out and make it all into dialogue, because every piece of dialogue builds your concept or your character, right?
Yeah, well, there's a big part of it where it's like, I recognize that a lot of people are used to having tips or whatever. The only extent I have a tip is like, I guess there was one thing that could definitely have been changed to a dialogue, where it's like, oh, you know, there's a new upgrade available. Like, I could have had somebody talk about that. But aside from that, it's just like, here are your objectives, and it pops up, it says like mission objectives and lists them out for you. Like, that's the only time where there's like any level of immersion breaking detail stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that it's it's reasonable enough to the point where it's like, you know, if you're paying attention to the dialogue, it's more than just, hey, there's this gameplay event that's coming up that I want the player to be aware of. It's also like, this is the character's interpretation of that, and this is what they're saying, and this is what they're choosing to say and not say, and there's a lot of subtleties. Like, there's even a specific decision that I make that's entirely based in the layout of the map or whatever, where, as an example, you have the third mission involves a certain character fighting Terrans while controlling Zerg, and their goal is to destroy starports. And then 3 maps later, that same character is fighting alongside Terrans against Zerg, destroying spires. And the entire way that the game is executed is completely different, but there's that similarity that calls back to an earlier level that is like, even though it's completely different execution, you're obviously playing a different race, the stakes are all different, so much has happened between the two. It's supposed to make you, like, grounded in the whole production. And that's obviously not even dialogue, that's just, like, the event. And you don't really see a lot of people trying to harken back to that. Like, the most you'll get is people reusing old terrain or something. Be like, oh, you're in the same location, so here's your new terrain. Or your new map that's old content. But aside from that, there's really not a whole lot that goes into people trying to create, like, a persistent thematic and really deliver on that same thematic. At least, that's what I feel like. I don't feel like there's a whole lot of people paying attention to, like, breaking down their gameplay and seeing, like, okay, I have this character involved in this element of the story, and it's at this point where that character, you know, by the end of the campaign, or by the end of this mission, they're going to be this much different. There's going to have been this much development in their character based on where they were at the beginning. And then they do that for every single character, and they do that for the plot overall, and figure out, like, what's actually different. And what has changed. Like, not many people do that in my experience, and it's really unfortunate because I would really like to see what people's ideas of characters actually end up being, but a lot of the time it doesn't feel like they end up being much of anything. And I can't imagine that I'm the only person to have thoughts about characters like this. I think that would be disingenuous to suggest, but again, I can't really explain the inexplicable absence of such content or such lines of thinking that as I can just, you know, discover them or read them.
I can't speak about user-made content because I haven't really played it, but I don't think I've seen a user-made campaign that the premise was actually interesting to me at all. None of them. I mean, that's more of an extent of just not being engaged in the world that they set in, though. Like, to me, if you really want to catch my eye, you gotta have something that's really original off the bat. And then some liberals might say that originality doesn't exist, everything's been discovered. Well,
you can still execute tired
yes,
concepts,
yeah,
in a really neat way.
It's always unique. Like, look at God of War, for example. That game is absolutely terrible, and it has a pretty original setting to it. And there is no development, there's nothing. It's just plot devices and bullshit and really, really thin excuses. And then you go into Dante's Inferno, same thing, based on a poem, has great source content, does nothing with it. Go into Darksiders, same fucking thing, terrible goddamn mess, great concept. And you have stuff that definitely, at the foundation, could have been original, but they don't do anything with it. And then you have stuff that isn't original whatsoever, like Bulletstorm, but is carried well enough that it just doesn't matter. You know, the execution was fairly strong. So I think a lot of people's problems when they make a campaign is they have like an idea for a character, but they're not actually writers. And then it comes to actually writing stuff out, and they just kind of like do like the bare minimum that they think they would say. And while they might understand stuff like people changing over time, they don't really know how to put it in, especially in a manner that isn't forced. Like if you try to force it, it comes out kind of like Star Wars, and it's just awful. So sometimes hesitation is better than trying to do stuff you're not really able to do. But
yeah, well, there's an element where restraint is key, and it's weird because you don't want to come across as being too restrained to the point where it's a detriment to your project and the characterization and development of your characters.
Be comfortable with.
Yeah. If you're too restrained, then it's obviously you're not, you know, confident in your own abilities. And if you're not restrained enough, then you're just Michael Bay, and you don't actually have anything of substance. So
Michael Bay.
Like, the problem with the mission that I just played, it starts off with a really long cutscene, like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or whatever. And I was just I'd not invested at all. I remember everything, but I won't remember it in an hour. You know, it's like that thing that is just going to go in one ear, out the other. And in it, this entire conspiracy is revealed. But you know how it's explained to you? It's told to you. There's no, like, showing any of this. And even if it were shown, at this point, the method of deployment of that information is so dumb that you're just hearing all of this stuff secondhand from somebody who discovered it. And it's not even like a character who was involved in the conspiracy. It's just, hey, I found this evidence that says this. What do you think of it? And the top part where they say evidence says this takes 10 minutes. And then the guy's just like, I don't give a shit. I'm too busy. And then cuts the transmission. And it's like, there's technically more going on there, but like he does have his own problems to deal with. But like that, it seems like a completely inappropriate way to introduce the concept of there being some sort of larger plot going on. To me, I feel like it would have been way better to have the mission, the campaign mission, and then have some sort of condensed version of that experienced where it comes to light from the perspective of somebody who was actually involved in the conspiracy. Like this Charlie Mox guy apparently was like in cahoots with the other Goliath dude to have some conspiracy going on where they were going to use these Zerg to hold fringe worlds to ransom, and they wouldn't pull them back. Like they had some way to control Zerg, and they were going to use it to like attack planets, and if the colonies didn't pay up, they would die. And you know, basically like they were just being evil capitalist assholes or whatever. And it's like, okay, I don't really see how that makes any sense within the story or within the setting, but if that's what you're going for, then go for it. But at least let me experience that plan in some form of motion, like from the perspective of one of the guys who was doing it, and like have us put 2 and 2 together, like, oh, these people have been putting up a front this whole time, and in reality we're seeing their true colors. But even then, at this point, we're in like the final stages of the second chapter, and there's been no indication that this has been the way it's been. It's like the first campaign had nothing to do with conspiracy, wasn't even hinted at, there's no build-up. It feels like they just retroactively applied the conspiracy filter to old events, instead of, like, it'd be like if 9/11 was actually an inside job, but we found out about it.
9/11.
Like, it just doesn't even make any sense to me. Like, it really does feel like they just came out of left field with their ideas. So I don't really know what to say about that mission. I feel like the opening made me fall asleep a little bit, and then I had to fight against some Protoss that didn't break and some Zerg that did break completely. And it was not an engaging experience at all. And I'm looking at this 40-minute runtime of the mission, and I know that 10 of that was sitting waiting for this guy to stop talking to me about a conspiracy I didn't care about. And it's like an utter failure to deliver on a climax of an interesting story with interesting characters.
Did he at least show some leg?
No, but in the previous mission, we saw some guys that nobody cared about die, so that was sort of that was sort of funny, I guess.
And if a man can't even show you some leg after chatting you up for 10 minutes, I don't know what to say, man. He's terrible at picking up boys at the bar.
Yeah, maybe he
you
meant to
want
get to
see
the
a
leather
nice
club.
hairy chunk of meat.
Well, that's what this mission was. A nice hairy chunk of meat. Cloaked.
Was it like horse hair or cat hair?
It was my hair.
Oh.